Hello and welcome to a secret no, it's not a secret. You've seen the thumbnail, you've read the title. We're in a Citi Golf. But this is not just any Citi Golf, it's mine. I bought it with my money for two main reasons. One, I never owned a Citi Golf and I always wanted one, so ta-da! Scratch that itch. And two, it's completely original and unmolested. So I just had to have it because it's the perfect basis for this next installment in our classic car documentary series. This one obviously being about the Citi Golf. Let's go. Okay, so here's how this works. We usually break this down into 4 chapters. Part 1, this video, is a general introduction to the range, sort of where, when, why, how. Part 2 is all the nitty-gritty, the specs, the engines, trim models, and there are plenty of those in the Citi Golf range, trust me. Part 3 is the pros and cons, sort of buyer's advice. And Part 4 is anecdotal, where we interview owners, past and present, and they give you their impression of what it's like to live with a Citi Golf. And now we're going to cut to voiceover, because I'm not doing any of this in the car, it's too hot. Can a Citi Golf go off-road? Of course it can, it's South African. It lives off-road.
In the early 1980s, Volkswagen of South Africa wanted to build a cheaper vehicle than the Mark II Golf that was on its way. The original Golf, Mark I, wasn't much more expensive than the Beetle it replaced, but the difference to Mark II was substantial, leaving VWSA with a gap in our very important entry-level market segment. The coastal town of Plettenberg Bay hosted a strategic planning meeting in July 1980, where VW execs weighed up their options for a good, cheap car. They considered the smaller Polo, but it was deemed too expensive as it required heavy investment in the manufacturing machines, also called tooling, for this model to be built here. VWSA had just done that for local production of the Passat and Golf II. And so, because the tooling for Mark I was still at their plant in Uitenhage, they decided to keep building the Mark I Golf, albeit under a new name or sub-brand. This was almost unheard of in the motor industry, which is why Volkswagen South Africa was worried about Germany's approval, never mind parts supply for a globally discontinued model. However, the Golf I Cabriolet or convertible came to their rescue because Germany was still building it alongside the new Mark II Golf. This meant that their idea was viable, plus most parts would still be available for a few years. To keep things simple, cheap, their new old car would only be offered as a 5-door hatch with petrol engines, front-wheel drive, and obviously right-hand drive. A 2-door version was considered, but the market had already spoken with record 5-door Golf sales after the 2-door only Beetle. Initially, the new car would be called an Econo Golf or something, with a low-spec 1.3-litre Golf 1 as a basis. At some point, a much smaller 895cc Polo engine was tested, but apparently it failed a heavy load test when it couldn't exit a parking garage in Johannesburg, so the 1300 engine was chosen. This was slightly modified for more power to suit our demanding and often long-distance journeys. Ditto for the taller 4th gear and different tires. The next problem was that the car looked and probably felt rather boring. Hans Greger and his team had diligently followed orders by delivering a stripped-out, bare-bones Kalahari beige prototype. Apparently, nobody liked it, especially Herr Greger, and the vibrant ad agency which had the almost impossible task of marketing this dreary newcomer. Nope, it was decided to shelve the Econo Golf idea and rather allow said agency to create a funky and exciting campaign, while also sprucing up the car itself. And so, that ad agency dug up an old Ford campaign based on the bright colors of Cape Town's Muizenberg Beach changing huts. These vibrant hues didn't initially work on the vehicles, but the team kept going, eventually adding white contrast panels, then white bumpers and white wheels. The name Citi also appeared on its flanks, and while it's unclear exactly where it came from, the name immediately stuck because it suited the vibrant and disruptive campaign. 3 CitiGolf prototypes were built for final approval. The red, yellow and blue vehicles may have taken a lot of time and resources, but they got almost instant approval from the client. VWSA loved it. Final approval and pre-production market surveys saw one more appearance by the EconoGolf, but that, together with every competing car at this price point, didn't stand a chance in a lineup against the red CitiGolf prototype. The people, it seemed, also loved it. With a strong Mondrian theme to their marketing campaign, VWSA and their ad agency even got a nod of approval from Germany, although cynics will point out that most executives thought CitiGolf would be a flash in the pan and just fizzle out after a few years. Production was set up around 1983, with quite a few parts having to be sourced from German suppliers, and a goal of around 300 vehicles per month, with sales commencing early in 1984. The first CitiGolfs were priced at 7,630 Rand, about the same as other economy vehicles at the time. And the local press gave it another thumbs up after a suitably colourful launch event at the Civic Theatre in Johannesburg, complete with New York breakdancers, in February of 1984. And, interestingly, one of the first corporate customers was Avis Car Rental, which meant that for most of the 1980s, you could witness business people zipping around major South African cities in, very colourful cities. Apparently, some of the pinstripe brigade even fought over what colour city they could have for their day. Speaking of colours, mid-1985 saw the introduction of the new sport model, with black as another colour choice. Not that black is a colour. Look out for our next video to see all the nitty-gritty specs for that model. In September 1988, a mild facelift gave the car bigger bumpers with deeper aprons, front and rear. The front fenders were slightly sloped backwards and the front grille was redesigned. Also, the comparatively large C-pillar, that's this big piece of metal behind the rear windows, got an L-shaped pressing. Some people call it a hockey stick. And that wasn't just a decorative element, that gave it extra strength. That bit of metal was prone to creasing while it was being pressed at the factory. So that, you can spot, is September 88 onwards. Sometime in 1989, a cosmetics company put in a small order of pink CitiGolfs to be used by their sales reps around the country. About 2 years later, upon the recommendation of their typist pool, VWSA manufactured a few more of this colour, officially named Parfait, but the sales never came. That makes the pink CitiGolf extremely rare because, according to the leading CitiGolf book, they only made 93 units in total. An automatic version was offered for more mature buyers. The same could be said for the more sedate single colour choices, which appeared a few years later. The original two-tone red, yellow, blue was available until late 1991 or early 92, when they made way for white, red, blue, metallic, black, green and other vivid hues. The early to mid-90s saw the introduction of branded models and special editions, which we will elaborate on in the next video. But a few highlights include the fuel-injected 1.8-litre CTI and bargain basement Citi Shuttle, which was replaced by the extremely popular Citi Chico in March 95. This derivative also introduced some strange colours like apple green or apricot orange. By this time, Volkswagen South Africa wasn't the only one to offer bare-bones models or regurgitated oldies. The CitiGolf's chief rivals included the Toyota Tazz, Fiat Uno, Ford Tracer and Mazda Midge. Also, there were 2 spin-offs from the CitiGolf, the half-ton Caddy pickup and a 3-box budget sedan called Fox. However, both of them didn't last the entire run of CitiGolf's production. Special editions kept coming and going until the early 2000s, when the CitiGolf received a major overhaul. Some engine upgrades and small spec changes had already taken place over the years, but late 2001 and early 2002 saw the biggest CitiGolf revamp, especially for the interior.
In November 2003, even more drastic changes were made when the front door windows became one piece, so this quarter light was deleted. And there was a new dashboard on the way. VWSA had already decided on a custom version of the Polo dash, but when Germany found out, they pulled the plug on their idea. VWSA tried again with a beautiful adaptation of a Skoda Fabia dashboard, and this time, Germany's reaction was the exact opposite. Apparently they said that they couldn't have done it any better themselves. Maybe not in such a strong accent.
By 2004 and 2005, the range included various 1.4 and 1.6 models, some of which got leather, shiny trim, even alloy wheels and twin exhaust pipes. Oh, and the rear light clusters were redesigned. The upgrades kept coming, including a lower bumper grille, MP3 radio and sporty R-Line models in 2006. This also heralded the arrival of the most powerful Citi Golf, or Mark I Golf if you like, of all time, the 1.8 IR. As mentioned before, please keep a lookout for the second video in this series, where we'll give you all the nitty-gritty specs about the various models. On Friday, the 28th of September 2007, VWSA built the 500,000th A1, meaning Mark I or Citi Golf. By January 2008, all cars in South Africa had to be at least EU2 emission compliant, and the Citi Golf wasn't. Volkswagen had worked tirelessly with the old dear, developing 24 unique parts, changing 5 existing ones, and adapting 10 carryover parts to achieve this goal. The brand new ECU, oxygen sensors and catalytic converters were just some of the parts on 10 engines and a fleet of 11 Citi Golf test mules, which were put through extreme tests and a total exceeding 1 million kilometers. The results were excellent, although it meant that the Chico 1.4-litre carburetor model was finally replaced by a fuel-injected equivalent. Unfortunately, the 1.8 R-Line also didn't make it, after just 375 of this most powerful Mark I ever had been produced. VW and their marketing agency kept experimenting with cool new names and features, some of which made it into the 2009 models. The biggest novelty was a driver's airbag. The lack of safety and emission standards were the Citi Golf's eventual demise, although VWSA points out that it also became increasingly difficult for Citi to remain competitive and meet the ever-increasing consumer demands, which is why the company had long started working on an equally successful successor, the Polo Vivo. By the way, we're also planning a documentary series on that. VW South Africa decided to celebrate the end of this incredible era by having the final 1,000 Citi Golfs numbered with a plaque. There were 2 paint choices and special trim reminiscent of the original Mark I. That's what they were called, by the way, Mark I. The very last Citi Golf ever built left the production line on Friday, 21 August 2009. It was promptly packed up and shipped off to Germany, where it is on display in Volkswagen's Wolfsburg Autostadt. When documented separately, VW built 377,484 Citi Golfs over a period of about 25 years. When the official retirement announcement was made in November of that year, it made front-page news and jammed the phone lines of a popular radio station who asked for everyone's Citi Golf stories. And so, with much fanfare and well-deserved nationwide tears, Volkswagen of South Africa bid farewell to the Citi Golf in 2009 with a huge national roadshow and many city-based events. They sent along another Mark I, which everyone could sign with their farewell wishes. That car was quickly scribbled full of friendly names and messages. Another Mark I model, number 003, was auctioned off online. The winning bidder happily paid almost 3 times the retail price because he was a huge VW fan, and proceeds went to one of his local charities. Also, the company organized motorsport celebrity and motoring journalist races all around the country, and we happened to be invited to the Killarney Cape Town leg. Not as a driver, mind you, because those race-prepared cities were piloted by 3 more experienced journos going up against some legendary local motorsport personalities, like Terry Moss, Reniel de Villiers, and Sarel van der Merwe. In summary, the VW CitiGolf wasn't just a long-lived, cheap old car. Besides pioneering a completely new market segment, it also broke new marketing ground and, most importantly, crept into the hearts of half a continent. As VWSA themselves would say, thanks for the memories.
Shift there, we're in top gear. Woo! We're in double figures, triple figures.